zone. So apparently, Alexei Kovalov, click on Alexei real quick. 1 second. This is interesting. Yeah, he's investigative editor at Medusa Project. So Alexei decided that I guess he was going to expose the gray zone or whatever about where their money comes from. So I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but whenever they have been asked about this, they always explain like, look, our money comes from you guys. Like the people donate to the gray zone. They're independent, yada, yada. So he decided to do a gotcha. Although instead of like this gotcha hurting the gray zone, I feel like it actually made the gray zone look better. So let me go ahead and pull this up. This is interesting. Alexei. So Alexei says, I expected gray zone's dark money donors to launder their grants via many identical anonymous $100 donations. But it turned out that rumors about Roger Waters, George is his legal name, bankrolling Moscow's pet tankies were true. So first of all, see how they describe people? You see how they, any narrative that you present that is different from the State Department, you're a tanky, you're a Putin puppet. We watch them do this with the Huru movement, right? We watch them do this in reference to Amali Yeshitela. They did this to him. Any type of narrative that you have that's different, this is how they refer to you. Now, I want to go ahead and show you. Let's go ahead and see if what he's saying true about Roger Waters. George is his legal name. Let's see. So George Roger Waters is an English musician. So George is his legal name. I just wanted to show you guys this so you can see this for yourself. Well, let's go back to Alexei. So Alexei decided to go through, I guess, receipts of their GoFundMe. This just seems so. Anyway, let me show you what he said. Defend the gray zone and independent journalism. Defend the gray zone and independent journalism against state repression. And it goes on to say, I founded the gray zone because there was simply nowhere else for me and many other independent journalists to go. By the time we launched as fully independent outlet in 2018, mainstream press was largely sold out. Okay. So if you scroll down, you'll see it says 266 people have just made a donation. I don't know who Mark is, but here it says George Waters, top donation, $30,000. So here's the question. If they're telling you that the funding comes from the people and you see the funding comes from the people, what's the problem? Is he upset because one of the donors is Roger Waters and Roger Waters is a famous musician? Is he upset because the amount of money that Roger Waters gave him? Or is he just trying to troll? Because if I say that I'm independent and I'm funded by the people, how is this incorrect? Roger Waters is one of the people. I don't see any donations from any think tanks or the military industrial complex. I don't see any donations from, I don't know, like Lockheed Martin. I don't see any donations from Wells Fargo. Like, what's the problem? Is the problem because Roger Waters also has a narrative that the State Department doesn't agree with? Is that what the problem is? People get donations all the time. And I have a feeling that if Roger Waters had the same narrative as the State Department, especially particularly with the war in Ukraine, I don't think Alexei would have went through all this trouble. Like, by the way, this tweet is not in response to another tweet. He just did this. Like, I don't understand why. It was just weird. So this is another smear effort against the gray zone. Now, if we want to compare the two between what just happened with Bernie Sanders and the gray zone, right? The difference is people that donated to Bernie's campaign donated to a campaign. That money was supposed to go to support Bernie's campaign. Those people didn't donate that money to go to Bernie Sanders' nonprofit. That's the problem. So if Roger Waters wanted to donate $30,000 to the gray zone, that's his right. They said they get independent donations. They didn't say we get independent donations from only people who make this amount of money per year. They didn't say that. They didn't give a cap of how high their donations are. So let me show you what happened after he did this. So he goes on to say, it may be a total coincidence, but a couple of weeks ago, I pointed out that an obscure conspiracy blog's claims to be 100% self-sustaining through small individual donations were quite implausible. It doesn't work that way, even for news sites with millions of daily visitors. And then I'll just click on this here. And it says, so who funds it? Willie Nelson Mandela, whoever that is, says individual small donors until proven otherwise. Accusation is not evidence. And Alexei goes on to say individual small donors of an obscure, barely updated blog with fewer monthly visits than my private Twitter account. And these small donors allow said blog, which barely ever even encourages anyone to donate, to stay 100% self-sufficient. Nah, that doesn't sound plausible at all. He goes on to say, some more speculation. What's the gray zone's current fundraising goal? How close are they to it? How much of the donations goes towards overheads, basic, standard practice, transparency, please? I think the problem is, though, we don't even demand that from corporate media. He's not demanding this of any other outlet. Just the ones that have a different opinion in reference to the war in Ukraine. And that's what this is really about. That's why he made the smear and called them Moscow pet tankies. That's what it's really about. So my whole thing is, let me come out of here. Go down just a little bit. I want you to see some of the responses. Will said, you're an investigative journalist, so I think you should know that a random tweet from a person who isn't involved with the gray zone isn't the gray zone, claiming that they're funded by individual small donors. Aaron Mate of the gray zone claims that they're major funders and high donors. So we'll go into what Aaron says. So he says, yes, I might not have seen it because you blocked me after you had to delete your attempted mockery. Congrats on unblocking. Major funders, all from the US. Can't say 100% because I'm sure there are Patreon donors from other countries. And that's in response to another tweet, but apparently he got blocked by that person. Twitter, like conversations on Twitter is just weird. Like people are just weird by this. Like people will like literally block you, but then they'll still talk about you from behind a block. It's just kind of weird. But and then that person was saying that guy's not an investigative journalist. But that's what this is really about. In my opinion, it is about the fact that they have a different opinion in reference to the war in Ukraine. Remember, they were the ones that found the boot at the bottom of the ocean there. And so people like Alexei, and we're going to go into him in just a second. He's sent out there to basically send out the attack dogs. So Alexei, it says City Uni London grad, World Press Institute fellow, Moscow Times alumni, investigative editor at Medusa Project, right? So of course, you know, Max Blumenthal had to jump in. Oh man, this is bad. He should have never done that tweet. So Max decided to clap back in response to him. And he said, these leaked documents we obtained show how Medusa is fully maintained by NATO as an information weapon to advance London and Washington's agenda against Moscow. They come from the Zinc network, an intel cutout of the British Foreign Office. And he has the receipts here. We are currently delivering audience segmentation and targeting support for two of Russia's leading independent media outlets, Medusa and Media Zona, and a range of independent investigative journalists in conjunction with data analysts at King's College London. The outlets lack the expertise and tools to understand their audience profiles and consumption habits, and to therefore promote content effectively to new audiences. Using action research methodology, our team is translating data provided by King's College London into audience segments that can be tracked online and offline, and conducting I think they mean weekly mentoring sessions with specialists from outlets, upskilling them to create targeting profiles that reach these segments and adjusting their editorial and commercial strategy accordingly. This innovative model, bringing together leading academia, local journalists, and cutting-edge digital marketing, helps outlets to reach broader audiences and create common framing of issues, thus contributing to a healthy democratic public discourse. He goes on to add another receipt. Activity 5, building resilience. The recent persecution of Ivan Gulanov, the freelance investigative journalist working for the new Latvia-based website Medusa, illustrates how journalists still face threats of trolling and intimidation when attempting to expose or counter Russian disinformation. Our activity will focus on 3 key areas: counseling and mental health support, specialist advisors, this is interesting, and cybersecurity. Boy, man, I have to read the whole thing, but he goes on to say, this is funny. Hundreds of supporters have donated over the past 48 hours to help us create dedicated positions for, that's Alex Rubenstein, he was here, and Kit Clarenberg and Wyatt Reed. NATO tools like Alexei are melting down now. Help us keep the momentum going here. And then that's the GoFundMe there. So one of the things that I want to say, and I want to get your opinion on as well. Let me go back to Alexei's tweet. There was a piece here where Alexei said a blog that rarely, where is it? This part here. Individual small donors of an obscure, barely updated blog with fewer monthly visits than my private Twitter account. Let's talk about that for just a second, because there's something that I do think should be mentioned here. When independent journalists are asking for donations for people to support their work, especially investigative journalists, that includes things like travel, accommodations, food. You get paid for food when you're traveling. Traveling overseas isn't cheap. So it's obvious, like Max and Aaron have been to places like, they've been to Gaza, right? They've been to Israel. They've been to Europe. They've been to all these different countries. That costs money. So I don't know how often Alexei wants them to produce articles, how many articles he wants them to produce per month. But the reality is that you do have to pay to do the investigative reporting. Those things aren't free. So I feel like Alexei here is kind of being like a gatekeeper. I told you there's so many of these people. They're like the gatekeepers of journalism, the gatekeeper, especially independent media. Oh, you got a donation from this person. Like, it's just the gatekeepers. And so I feel like Alexei was being a gatekeeper, but also he's trying to smear them. He was hoping that by posting this, that this would actually discourage people from donating to the gray zone. That's what he was hoping that would happen. But honestly, people saw this, and let me see. Oh, I hate this new format on Twitter. I used to be able to just pick on the quote tweets, and I can't do that anymore. But obviously, what happened was some people saw that and they were like, Roger Waters donated $30,000 to the gray zone. Damn, Roger Waters is based. It didn't work the way that they thought it would. Like, that actually made Roger Waters look damn good, that he's supporting independent journalism. And that also made Gray Zone look kind of based, like, well, damn, like, you guys are doing a really good job if someone's willing to donate that much to you. So this did not work in Alexei's favor. That's the problem. That's the problem. It actually made people look kind of based. But we'll talk about that tonight on Call In. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about, I think I put that on the Call In tab, and Bernie Sanders. I think it's that one and the Bernie one, the finance stuff. Like, do you feel that there's a certain amount that's too much to donate to someone? Do you feel that there's a certain amount for that? Or do you feel like if it's an individual donation, it doesn't really matter? Don't look at me. No one's giving me $30,000. Okay. I don't have to tell you that. But I don't do investigative journalism. Just FYI, like, no one's giving me that kind of money. But we can talk about that tonight on Call In. Do you have a problem with that? Or do you think that that's actually pretty cool that Roger Waters is trying to help? Something to think about.